during the period 2006 to 2009. Ministry paper number 27 of 2023 entitled Annual Report of for the Financial Year 2021-2022 in respect of the Management Institute for National Development. Ministry paper number 28 of 2023 entitled Annual Report on Audited Financial Statement of the Coconut Industry Board for the year ended December 31, 2020. Annual Report for Petrojam Limited for the financial year ended 2021-2022. Annual Report for the Broadcasting Corporation for the financial year ended 2020-2021. The Jamaica Gazette Supplement Proclamation Rules and Regulations 453, Volume 146, dated Wednesday, February 15, 2023, number 24. In respect of number 29, the Emergency Powers Parish of St. Anne and Clarendon and specified area in the parishes of Kingston and St. Andrew. Regulations 2023 under the Emergency Powers Act. The Tax Expenditure Statement 2023, the Jamaica Public Bodies Estimate of Expenditure, the Jamaica Public Bodies Estimates of Revenue and Expenditure for the year ending March 2024, the Estimates of Expenditure 2023-2024 for the financial year ending March 31, 2024, the Government of Jamaica Fiscal Policy Paper for the financial year 2023-2024, the Medium-Term Debt Management Strategy for the financial year 2023-2024 to the financial year 2026 to 2027, the Revenue Expenditures 2023 for the financial year ending March 31, 2024, the 2022-2023 Public Sector Consolidated Estimates of Expenditure for the financial year ending March 31, 2024. The Jamaica Gazette Supplement Proclamation Rules and Regulations contained in Volume 145, dated Saturday, December 31, 2022, in respect of number 331A, 334, and 332A, respectively. With respect to the insurance, actuaries, life insurance companies, Amendment Regulations 2022, the Insurance Actuary General Insurance Companies Amendment Regulations 2022, and the Insurance Amendment Regulations 2022, respectively, under the Insurance Act.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Bills brought from the Honourable House of Representatives.
The following is a message from the Speaker of the House of Representatives. To the Honourable Senate, I have the honour to advise the Honourable Senate that on the 21st day of February 2023, a bill entitled An Act to Temporarily Modify the Representation of the People Act in order to postpone the holding of a general election of members to serve on the respective councils of municipal corporations and a general election of the mayors of city municipalities was passed in the House of Representatives. Signed, Marissa Dalrymple Philibert, CD, MP, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Mr. President, I signify my willingness to take charge of the bill.
Thank you, Minister.
A bill shortly entitled The Representation of the People, Postponement of Elections to Municipal Corporations and City Municipalities Act 2023, read a first time.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice that at a later stage today, I will seek suspension of the standing orders to allow the bill to be taken through its concluding stages.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President, I also beg to give notice of second reading of the bill.
Petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to questions, motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to the sitting of the Senate, motions for leave to introduce bills, the presentation of bills without the leave of the Senate first obtained, public business.
Mr. President, it is intended today to take two substantive matters. The first being the bill which we will call the Segregated Accounts Bill, which will be led by, piloted rather, by Senator Hill, who holds the role of Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce, followed thereafter by the Act to temporarily modify the Representation of the People's Act. So it is intended to proceed in that order as the technical team is here from MIIC, and I would therefore ask, with your leave, Minister Hill to take the matter.
Thank you very much, Minister. Minister Hill, Mr. Sinclair.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we can see, the bill is quite an extensive document. It comes in 6 parts, and it has been going through the process for a while. Mr. President, started a cabinet decision in 2017. When I knew of it partially when I was at MEGJEC. And when I came to this ministry in February last year, I asked for an update, got it, and the files were moved to us in April 22, and we're here now to take this bill through all its phases. The bill seeks to provide for the registration and operation of companies that operate segregated accounts or incorporated segregated accounts, Mr. President. A segregated accounts company is a registered company under the Companies Act, which comprises of one or more segregated accounts. A segregated account is a distinct account which separates its assets and liabilities from the assets and liabilities of the other accounts in the segregated accounts company. It's a long bill. I think I will need a glass of water. A segregated account allows for flexibility where a company wishes to engage in a variety of activities to prevent the company from having to incorporate a new company for each venture. This may be particularly attractive for companies which manage several investments and other portfolios. Further, it prevents winding up procedures. You see how you start test me. Leave me alone, you know. Let me finish my business and please, Mr. President. Further, Mr. President, it prevents winding up procedures of the entire company at the termination of each portfolio. Instead of termination of one account becomes an internal procedure for the SAC, the segregated account company. On the other hand, an incorporated segregated accounts company is a registered company under the Companies Act, which is comprised of one or more incorporated segregated accounts, each having a separate legal personality. All the benefits mentioned above are applicable to the incorporated segregated accounts company. However, the distinction is that each incorporated segregated account can hold assets in its own name and sue and be sued. Investors and businesses, therefore, have the option, and this is what we're offering. The segregated account and the incorporated segregated account is really to offer an option. Some people like to eat rice, others like to eat bread. So we are giving them an option. Investors and businesses, therefore, have the option to choose the vehicle which best suits their need and further facilitates the ease of doing business in Jamaica. The bill, therefore, provides for the principles and distinctions associated with the types of companies, including: first, is a segregated accounts company is permitted to establish one or more segregated accounts, each of which qualifies as a separate account of the segregated accounts company. Two, an incorporated segregated accounts company is permitted to establish one or more incorporated segregated accounts which are separate legal persons, distinct from the incorporated segregated accounts holding company. The assets and liabilities of a segregated accounts company which are attributed to a particular segregated account is incorporated segregated accounts are separate from the assets and liabilities attributed to other such accounts. And fourth, resulting from this segregation of assets and liabilities, a creditor of one such account does not, Mr. President, have recourse against the asset of other segregated accounts. That's a very important distinction. It's a very important separation, an option that we're giving to investors coming to Jamaica. And as you know, I'm out there inviting investors to come to a climate in Jamaica where the economy is growing, where we have substantial NIR, and where we have people trained to take on the work, such as really learned lawyers, for my colleagues across the aisle. So we're looking for investors to come, and we want them to make sure they have these options. That too. Further, the bill allows, Mr. President, companies established thereunder to effectuate the segregation of assets and liabilities in connection with numerous industries, including real estate, ship and aircraft ownership, as well as for the segregation of new business ventures from existing old ventures. Part 1 deals with, Mr. President, it provides for the short title of the bill. The part also defines key terms and use, therefore, and rules rather throughout the bill, such as the following: account owner, bank, beneficial owner, creditor, general account, general shareholder, incorporated segregated account, incorporated segregated accounts company, segregated account, and segregated accounts company. Additionally, this part provides for the provision of the Companies Act to apply to the provisions of this bill. Again, the Companies Act is important, and that too, as you probably know, is being revised even as I speak to you. The second part is the registration, Mr. President. This part provides for the application process for registration. Documentation required where a company has conducted business prior to its registration. The right of an account owner or creditor to object to a registration and the procedure for the same. The grounds upon which the registrar may grant approval for and the procedure to be followed by the registrar when the registration is refused. The removal of segregated accounts or incorporated segregated accounts company from the register. Part 3, Mr. President, which I would want to call the meat of the Act, is the management and administration of these companies. This part provides for the management and administration of a segregated and incorporated segregated account company. This part provides for the following: the requirement for a company to, in writing, inform any person with whom it enters a transaction that it is a segregated accounts company or an incorporated segregated accounts company, and the personal liability of the directors where a company contravenes this requirement. This is very important. Disclosure of what kind of legal entity it is a requirement of the management of those companies. So you can't hide and put it in one place and then later on say, oh, but we have a... No. You have to disclose at the beginning. The appointment of a person approved by the primary regulator or of a company as the representative of the company, the duties of the appointed representative, the penalty for the failure to fulfill the said duties, and the replacement of a representative where he has resigned, his license or her license has been revoked. The structure and content to be contained within the governing instrument of a segregated or incorporated segregated accounts company. Mr. President, fourth is the appointment of an asset or liability among two or more segregated accounts, incorporated accounts, and the general account. The creation of an issuance of securities in one or more classes by a segregated or incorporated segregated accounts is also outlined in this part. The treatment of dividends, distributions, repurchases, and the reduction of capital. The payment of dividends or making of distributions in regard of securities of any class linked to a segregated account, and the reduction of capital. The circumstances within which a segregated accounts or incorporated segregated accounts company may reduce its share capital. Application to the court for a confirming order where a segregated or incorporated segregated accounts company passes a resolution approving a reduction in share capital. If there is an objection by the creditor, the company must apply to the court for an order confirming the reduction. Also, this part allows for the applications to the registrar for the approval to reduce the share capital of a segregated or incorporated segregated account. The procedure for the registrar to register the order of reduction and minute is in this part of the Act. The contributory's liability to pay debt of creditors of altered segregated accounts company or incorporated segregated accounts company. The requirement for a company under the bill to maintain records in accordance with the generally accepted accounting principles used in the preparation of the financial statements of the company in accordance with the relevant sections of the Companies Act, so that the records will clearly show the share capital, the proceeds of rights, reserves, issues, securities, assets, liabilities, and dividends, etc., which are linked to each such account. The requirement for a segregated and incorporated segregated accounts company to file annual returns to the registrar, certifying that the company's operations during the preceding year were compliant with the provisions of the bill and the Companies Act, and creates an offense for a failure to file such a return. The nature of segregated accounts, the rights of creditors in respect of any liability of a segregated accounts company arising from a transaction, and the circumstances within which assets may be transferred from the general account to a segregated account. Mr. President, the treatment of liabilities of segregated accounts companies is also addressed in this part of the Act. The order of priority of rights where a segregated account has insufficient assets to pay all its obligations in full. the nature of incorporated accounts, the rights of creditors in respect of any liability linked to an incorporated segregated account, and the circumstances within which assets may be transferred from the general account to an incorporated segregated account. The limitation of the power of an incorporated segregated accounts company to enter transactions on behalf of any of its segregated accounts, its segregated accounts company, or other incorporated segregated accounts of the company. This part also includes the procedure for dispute resolution. The limitation of creditor enforcement rights to the assets of the segregated accounts for segregated accounts companies. The limitation of creditor enforcement rights to the assets of the incorporated segregated accounts for incorporated segregated accounts companies. The rights and obligations with respect to segregated accounts and incorporated segregated accounts. The account owner's beneficial interests in segregated accounts and incorporated segregated accounts. This point, Mr. President, it really is, when you see the technicality and the years that have gone into this, it really is a good point for me to say thank you to the technical people. Mr. Ricky Davis, for instance, who is the interim CEO. Ricky is the interim CEO of JISTV, under which the segregated accounts fall. Mrs. the Jamaica International Financial Services Authority. Thank you for reminding me. JISTV is an acronym that I should have said what it is before I use the acronym. Thank you so much. Mr. Davis is the interim CEO. Our legal officer at the ministry has worked very hard. Mrs. Yvette Sutherland is not here this morning, but one of our lawyers here to support her. And you can see the amount of work, and I still am only at part 4, which I will start after a sip of water. Mr. President, part 4 deals with the beneficial ownership of segregated accounts and incorporated segregated accounts. This part provides for the requirement for companies registered under the bill to keep an accurate and up-to-date register of beneficial owners, which must contain the following: the full name of the beneficial owner, the date of ownership, the date the individual ceased to be an owner, where applicable, a copy of the valid identification of the owner, their residential address, and the address for service, their date of birth, their nationality, their occupation, the particulars of the beneficial interest of the owner, and how the interest is held, and any other information as may be required. As when you hear that, you know it is part of what the OEC requires on the financial, from the Financial Action Task Force, and they're very particular about who the beneficial owners are, so that you can't hide and take dirty money into our country. We don't want that. We want to make sure, if we're running this financial services system for investors from around the world, people can be sure that it's clean and up to date. This part, and the first part that I've just read, under the part 4 of the beneficial ownership, is critical to setting up the proper segregated accounts and the proper incorporated segregated accounts. The part also provides for the manner in which the registrar is to be kept. Sorry, that should be the register of the company is kept. Additionally, the part provides for an offense for the failure to maintain a register of beneficial owners. So you must constantly know who the owners are. If they change, you have to update the register. This part further provides for the duty of the company to obtain beneficial owners' information. It's a responsibility of the segregated accounts company or the incorporated segregated account company to get the details of the beneficial owners, not who the owner in between might be, but you must trace right back to who the beneficial owner is if you're running such a company here in Jamaica under this Act. It also provides for the inspection of the register of beneficial owners by a beneficial owner or attorney. Provides for the rectification of the register where particulars that are required to be extended in the register are omitted, rather, required to be entered in the register are omitted or inaccurately entered, or there is unreasonable delay in entering the particulars of the register. Updating of the register where there is a new beneficial owner, and of course, the non-disclosure of the beneficial owner's particulars in the register, so there must be confidentiality. Part 5, Mr. President, deals with receivership and the winding up of these companies. This part provides for grounds upon which the court may make a receiving order in respect of one or more incorporated segregated accounts for the following purposes. A, the orderly management, sale, rehabilitation or termination of the business, or attributable to the segregated account or incorporated segregated account, and B, the distribution of the assets linked to the account to those entitled. The part, Mr. President, further provides for the ineffectiveness of a resolution for the winding up of a segregated accounts company or an incorporated segregated accounts company where a receivable order has been granted without the leave of the court. The application of receivership orders, and it's permitted to make sure an application is done. Notice of this application should be served on the affected company, the registrar, the primary regulator, or any other persons as directed by the court. Mr. President, the voluntary appointment of a receiver by owners of a segregated or incorporated segregated account, or the direction of a company to which the bill applies, and the function and powers of the appointed receiver is also addressed in this part of the Act. Additionally, this part provides for the discharge and variation of receivership orders, the remuneration of the appointed receiver, the procedures for the winding up of segregated or incorporated segregated accounts company, how a liquidator is to deal with assets and liabilities linked to each segregated or incorporated segregated account in the winding up of a segregated or incorporated segregated account. At this point, I think it's important to just stress how important and what a really useful set of options this government is providing prospective investors in Jamaica and around the world. So absolutely very, very vital. Thank you. I will take it. Chapman. Mr. President, because when you're coming from a foreign jurisdiction, let's take a foreigner for instance, and you come to Jamaica, you want to know that the rules are very, very clear. You hear how specific I've had to go through this summary, because when you put your assets in, I really don't want my assets to be colluded with anybody else's, and I must have that assurance that a segregated account or an incorporated segregated account does this. Now, again, I want to give some credit to Ricky Davis. Ricky lived in the Bahamas, and the Bahamas is the only other place in this region that does this. And we have been very careful to make sure we not only understand theirs, but make sure ours is even better. So it's right up to date. And investors, and I'm saying it publicly, everywhere I go, investors are welcome to come to Jamaica, which is a very attractive investment destination. Today, we're making it even more attractive. Additionally, Mr. President, this part provides for fixed penalties and the procedure for applying the same. The offence of making false, deceptive, or misleading statements. Generally offences further detailed in the second schedule, and the eighth item here, any fees payable under the third schedule by the segregated or incorporated segregated accounts company to be payable to the registrar. Part 6, which is general, Mr. President, and it's the final part before I come to the schedule. This part provides for the following. 1, the general regulations making power of the minister subject to negative resolution. Again, an item for efficiency. Number 2, the prohibition of the filing of any suit or action against a registrar or supervisor of insolvency or any person acting on their behalf in respect of anything done in their official capacity in good faith, without negligence. 3, the indemnification of the registrar or supervisor of insolvency from being required to prosecute, defend, or take part in any proceedings outside the jurisdiction of the court. And finally, Mr. President, under this part, a savings law clause to permit the rules of common law and equity applicable to companies as applicable to segregated accounts companies and incorporated segregated accounts companies governed by or formed under this bill. Accordingly, the part provides that no transaction or interest in a segregated account or incorporated segregated account will be void by reason only that at the relevant time the segregated accounts or the incorporated segregated accounts company failed to comply with or is in breach of any provision of the bill. The first schedule, Mr. President, deals with offences and penalties. This schedule specifies the applicable penalties for offences committed under this bill. The second schedule, Mr. President, deals with offences in respect of which liability to conviction may be discharged by payment of a fixed penalty. This schedule specifies the offences in respect of which liability to conviction may be discharged by payment of a fixed penalty. This third schedule, Mr. President, naturally deals with fees payable to the registrar, something that as a minister I'm keenly interested in, and my legal colleagues I'm sure are very interested in. This schedule sets out the applicable fees payable to the registrar for, among other things, 1, the application to object to registration of segregated accounts company or incorporated segregated accounts company. 2, application to register segregated accounts company or an incorporated segregated accounts company. 3, request to remove a segregated accounts company or an incorporated segregated accounts company from the registrar. And fourth and finally, Mr. President, the filing particulars of company representatives, as we mentioned before. Then, of course, we have the Memorandum of Objects and Reasons, Mr. President. The memorandum stipulates the key objectives of the bill, if it pleases you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Minister Hill. Senator Scott Motley.
Mr. President, this opposition supports any legislation which will strengthen the financial space in which we operate and which will signal to investors, both locally and internationally, that Jamaica is a safe, responsible environment in which to invest. Mr. President, this assurance becomes even more vital, having regard to what has been taking place in our financial institutions. Because what has been highlighted over the last few weeks is the enormity of persons committing fraud in the institutions. The last one being quite horrifying, to think of somebody walking out of a bank with $35 million stashed.
Senator Scott Motley, the report from the police was that they have no report. So
well,
we just have to be I'm just asking you to exercise caution.
I cannot exercise
caution in that regard.
Respectfully, Mr. President.
Sorry.
Respectfully.
But Senator Scott,
allow me to finish, Mr. President, because you're reprimanding me and asking me to exercise caution about a matter which has been in the public domain.
And
now that you have pointed out to me that there is a report that it is fake, then I can withdraw it. But prior to that, you must be aware that we rely on the news media to inform us.
And the news media, Senator Scott Motley, had a report which would indicate that there has been no report from an official source. Senator Brown, take it easy. I am just asking Senator Scott Motley, having regard to the damage that can be done by these comments.
I have no hesitation. I will speak to Stocks and Securities Limited, which we all acknowledge is something that has taken place in Jamaica and which has gone international, and to which we have requested the FBI to be involved. Because since you have taken me there, Mr. President, I will comfortably go there.
Senator Scott Motley, and even in that regard, I would just ask you to exercise caution for the fact that there has been someone who is charged and before.
And
I'm just asking you to exercise caution in respect to your comments.
Respectfully, Mr. President, I'm very aware of the caution which I need to have in these matters.
Very well, Senator Scott Motley.
But I will say, in relation to the bill that we are discussing this morning, that it is very important that we have the legislation which is implemented in such a way that persons who are outside and watching know that they are taken seriously and they are implemented carefully. Because what is clear, Mr. President, is that one of the things that we ought to be concerned about, and which would be of concern in the international financial arrangements, is the fact that monies have crossed between accounts without any regard being had for the rules which apply to that. So I go back to the matter at hand directly, Mr. President. I would not have wanted to be so detained by other issues as you have caused me to be. So Jamaica is moving forward now to having not just a segregated account within an entity, but having a segregated and incorporated segregated account. And this, I think, is important because the fact that they have also done an incorporated segregated account means that each account has a legal personality. That is what this now gives to the segregated account entity. It could have been solely to have segregated accounts within an organization, within an institution. But Jamaica has actually gone a step further. So, Mr. President, the opposition commends the government for taking this step. It is important. It is important. It is important, furthermore, as you have said, Minister Hill, that we take every precaution against having what is commonly termed dirty money coming to our institutions. And much concern has been raised about that, particularly with some of the real estate development that we see taking place in the country. The brokers themselves have expressed concern, and that again has come into the media because of the recent ruling of the Privy Council, which requires that attorneys at law be brought under the poker regime. Although happily they have protected the right to the client's confidentiality, as is something that the bar has always wanted. But I will say this concern that I have, Mr. President, and through you to the Minister, I have looked at the fines. And the fines make my eyebrows raise, but not in a matter that they are high, but how low they are. Let us look, for example, sir, where the officer of a segregated accounts company or incorporated segregated accounts company, that is offense under 20, I'm sorry, it's the second paragraph, easier for me to do that way. Willfully conceals the name of a creditor entitled to object to the reduction of capital of a segregated account or incorporated segregated account and other willful misrepresentations as they go on. That penalty is $250,000. But the one prior to that is even worse in my view, because surely it is incumbent on the proper functioning of this system which you are establishing that persons must know what is happening internally in the company. And so the company representative is required under this law to make a report to the registrar in case of insolvency or the failure or involvement of the company. The question of insolvency is of primary importance because under this legislation, creditors have first call on any funds within the company. The actual account holders do not rank as high. They rank below the creditors. And so it must be significant that this report be made. But the conviction is a fine of $250,000. And what I would urge you to do is that...
And tint of 500,000. No, that's not.
Tint is really 500,000.
Yes.
And so, Mr. President, through you, I would urge the Minister to revisit, although it is so soon, to revisit those fines. And also, respectfully, you were saying how much you looked forward to the filing fees. But these filing fees, Minister, I don't think you looked at them. Because they are, and can you imagine volume which you anticipate if they had not been as low as $5,000 to file? Can you imagine that you would really have something to celebrate with people filing their returns and obeying the requirements of the legislation? I think the filing is low. And I will tell you that because I'm a generous person, I take into account that you have been working on this from 2017.
Not me, but from 2020.
That it has been worked on from 2017. But I think that you need to take a rethink and a relook at some of those matters. So in saying so, Mr. President, the opposition gives its support to this legislation, if it pleases you.
Thank you, Senator Scott Motley. All right, Minister.
Mr. President, I really appreciate the submission by the Leader of Opposition Business, Senator Scott Motley, I appreciate that you recognize that we have taken the segregated account and the incorporated segregated account legislation to a much higher level. The Jamaica International Financial Services Authority, JISTV, regulates these accounts. The Bank of Jamaica regulates banks and are therefore separate or near banks, as some of the names that have been called here today would be classified as. So JISTV is not involved in that business. The point that Senator Scott Motley made about fines is absolutely, she should have seen me bowing my head, and I'll be talking to my, bowing one head. What will be bowing my head, I'm not mad yet, but I'll be talking to my colleagues as we get this in place to very quickly look at this as one area that must be adjusted. It might be linked to the Companies Act as well. So I know that because I'm looking at the Companies Act. So we'll have to adjust the Companies Act to make the request that Senator Scott Motley made to us a reality. But we will do that. And Mr. President, I ask for the second reading of the bill.
Question is that the bill be read a second time. Those in favour? Those against? Ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Provide for the Registration and Regulation of Companies that Operate and Maintain Segregated Accounts and Incorporated Segregated Accounts and for Connected Matters, read a second time.
The Senate will now resolve. Senate will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause. Minister, you wish to proceed? I didn't hear much of. Do you have any?
Mr. President, can you guide it as to how to proceed, because we are not objecting to any of the...
Thank you. He said something, Senator Brown? Part by part. All right, so we have part one, which has 3 clauses, 1, 2, and 3. Put those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Part 2, which is clauses 4 through 9. Those in favor? Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Put part 3, which has clauses 10 through to 36. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. I put part 4 with clauses 37 through to 42. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. I put part 5, which has clauses 43 through to 54. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. I put part 6, which has clauses 55 through to 59. Those in favor? Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it. We have the schedules. We have there are three schedules. The first schedule, second schedule, third schedule. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. I put the title and enacting clause. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendments. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Madam.
Sorry. Wait a second. Yes. You wanted to say something in committee, Minister? All right, thank you. I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without amendments. Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I now ask that the bill be read a third time.
Question is that the bill be read a third time. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Provide for the Registration and Regulation of Companies that Operate and Maintain Segregated Accounts and Incorporated Segregated Accounts and for Connected Matters, read a third time and passed.
Thank you.
Minister Johnson-Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now move for suspension of the standing orders to enable me to take second reading of a bill entitled An Act to Temporarily Modify the Representation of the People's Act in order to postpone the holding of a general election of members to serve on the respective councils of the municipal corporation and a general election of the mayors of city municipalities, and to take it through all its concluding stages.
And members, those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it.
Mr. President, I rise to present the representation of the People Act, postponement of elections to municipal corporations and City Municipalities Act 2023. This bill seeks to postpone the holding of an election of members to serve on the respective councils of municipal corporations and the mayors of city municipalities to a date no longer than, or rather no later than, 28th of February 2024. Members would be aware that local government elections are slated to be held every 4 years according to the Representation of the People's Act. The general local government election was last conducted on November 28, 2016, and had therefore been due by the 29th day of November 2020. The 8th schedule of the ROPA provides for a period of extension of 90 days, commencing on the day after the 4th day, or rather the 4th anniversary of the date on which the most recent election was held. And this would have allowed for the next local government elections to be held no later than February 2021. Due to the serious and novel circumstances brought on by the protracted COVID-19 pandemic, however, the government sought and received parliamentary approval for a longer period of postponement. The ROPA, Postponement of Elections to Municipal Corporations and City Municipalities Act 2022, passed in this chamber on the 4th of February last year, remains in force until the 28th day of February, that is, next Tuesday. This bill therefore seeks to postpone those elections to a date no later than February 28, 2024. Mr. President, the reasons proposed for the postponement of the general local government elections are set out in the memorandum and objects of reason and have been spoken to in that other place. The first and foundational reason is to allow for further time to complete the process to establish Portmore as Jamaica's 15th parish. This requires further consultation and the passage of the requisite legislation. More particularly, however, this process has implications for the boundaries of Portmore and the rights of the people of Portmore to vote. It will have a direct impact on the next general election of members to serve on the respective councils of municipal corporations and the election of a mayor, in keeping with the Local Governance Act. The government has undertaken to complete the process to establish Portmore as Jamaica's 15th parish before the next general local government election. Among other things, this will address the vexed issue of the arrangements regarding the attendance of Portmore's councillors at meetings of the St. Catherine Municipal Corporation. And moreover, Portmore's achievement of parish status will be an evolution in its local governance and self-expression. We suggest, Mr. President, that on a reasonable examination and a balance of the circumstances, that it is prudent in this context to delay the general local government elections to allow for the completion of the legislative process, which is far progressed and already in train. Mr. President, the second reason for the postponement of local government elections at this time is the efficient management of the budget for electoral matters. Generally, governments must always contemplate and balance the high cost of holding elections with the many critical competing budgetary priorities. And at this time, it is deemed more critical to continue focusing on Jamaica's efforts on continuing pandemic recovery, on building resilience to further shocks such as natural disasters, as well as keeping the country on a path to sustained growth. When members balance these considerations against the prospect of having to spend and re-spend on elections in Portmore once the new parish arrangements are complete, it would be clear as a totality where the priorities should be placed at this time. To proceed with the local government elections without completing the legislative process to make Portmore Jamaica's 15th parish would be a waste of taxpayers' dollars and scarce resources. We therefore suggest that the route before us is a more sensible course of action. The third reason, Mr. President, is a high level of uncertainty in the global economic environment. It is indisputable that over the last few years, the world has been going through an almost unprecedented period of unpredictability. The pandemic provided one context for us, and thank God the worst of that is behind us, although it does still present global uncertainties as defined by the WHO. But more broadly, however, and I just want to share the thinking rather than try to insert my own, but to share thinking from a senior economist at Deloitte that had published a recent economic outlook. He says, "It has been 3 years since the start of the pandemic, and the global economy has been through a series of unexpected and hugely impactful disruptions. Over the past year alone, we witnessed the biggest surge in inflation in 40 years, a rapid tightening of monetary policy, significantly increased risk of recession, the biggest land war in Europe since the 1940s, massive disruption of supply chains, a serious shortage of labor in many countries, commodity market volatility, and a growing debate about the future of globalization. As we enter 2023, many questions arise. Will inflation recede? Will countries experience recession? Will supply chains improve? Will labor market tightness continue? And very importantly, what is the outlook for each of the world's major economies? There are plenty of reasons to expect a slowdown," he says. The vulnerability of Europe to Russian energy sanctions, China's housing market problems, and the impact on global food supplies because of the continued war in Ukraine are all significant headwinds. And he continues, the point being clear that there is much uncertainty in the global environment. And of course, one can consult the IMF World Economic Outlook, which, although improved from last year, still, of course, speaks to quite a significant risk. So, Mr. President, in these circumstances, clearly we are extremely proud that the Jamaican economy has staged a strong recovery. We are extremely proud. But we on this side are also extremely clear that our recovery has been based on very strategic and cautious steps. It has been a delicate balancing act to cushion the most vulnerable while addressing macroeconomic matters and still undertaking revolutionary and groundbreaking efforts such as the compensation review. Absolutely. We continue to seek to grow, and while we are proud that we have arrived at pre-pandemic growth, we not only have to protect it, our visions extend beyond. We also absolutely have to note that if during this delicate time we had followed any of the calls on economic matters made by the opposition, we would certainly not have made this recovery. We would not have. As being experienced by many of the countries from whom it seems they may have gotten some of their suggestions. But we feel confident, therefore, Mr. President, we feel confident in following our understanding of the balance necessary under the leadership of Prime Minister, the Most Honourable Andrew Holness, and the Minister of Finance, Nigel Clark, in these matters. We are emerging strongly, but we cannot afford to be unmindful of the potential for shocks around us. Elections do not only divert funds, but they divert attention and focus, and we believe that the better view is to err on the side of caution and to focus at this time on recovery and resilience. Mr. President, I will now engage in a relatively short clause-by-clause review. Clause 1 contains the short title of the bill. It sets out the commencement date for the proposed postponement as February 28, 2023. Clause 2 provides the authorization to temporarily continue the period during which local government elections can be held. It begins on the February 28, 2023 and ends on February 28, 2024. As was the case previously, this is facilitated by amending paragraph 4, subparagraph 7 of the 8th schedule of the Representation of the People's Act. Clause 2 also stipulates that the Act will expire on the ending date of February 28, 2024, or on the date of any local government elections that are held before that time. Mr. President, this government remains sharply focused on recovery and building resilience in the interests of the Jamaican people. We are in a better place than we were a year ago, and indeed than a year before that. But we cannot afford to risk our progress in the face of global instability, and proceeding as we are today is the carefully considered view of this government. Once we have established Portmore as Jamaica's 15th parish, and our resilience is more effectively consolidated as the global and domestic and economic outlooks improve, the local government elections will be held. So, Mr. President, it is in this context that I submit this bill for the Honourable Senate's review and approval, and I ask that this pleases you, Mr. President. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Johnson-Smith. Thank you, Senator Morris, and in the absence of Dr. Morris, I don't have to make the distinction today.
Thank you, Mr. President, and please allow me to speak from a seat that is not my own.
Yes, thank you. I recognize you from a seat other than your own.
Mr. President, this morning I rise to stand on the side of the Jamaican people. And in standing on the side of the Jamaican people, I have to stand in objection to the delay of the overdue local government elections. The importance of local government can't be understated, and I think we can acknowledge, on this side at least, the importance of having strong local government. And our attitudes over time, at least on this side, have signaled that we intend to ensure that the sacredness of the institution is upheld. In 2016, when there were amendments made to the Local Government Act, which ensured and enshrined that local government elections would be due every 4 years, that was a step that showed that we respected local government. But, Mr. President, I cannot understand how in 2023 we are regressing to a point where we see it fit to trample on the democratic principles that have been afforded to the Jamaican people. Yeah. Mr. President, I want us to look at the facts. And I took some time to peruse the reasons that were given in the bill for the postponement. And I came to the conclusion that the reasons are quite farcical. Quite farcical. Because when you look at it, why should the entire Jamaica and the democracy that the Jamaican people have been afforded be held at ransom because the government is trying to make Portmore a parish?
Gerrymandering.
Why? Why? And this is a very real question. Why, at a time when the government posits to have the largest budget, there are no funds available for an election?
Gerrymandering.
The government has collected an excess of 80 billion of projected revenue, and the Minister of Finance announced growth in the economy and is expecting consistent growth for the upcoming financial year. Mr. President, I ask why, when it is the duty of the government in good times and in bad times to allocate financial resources that will allow the Jamaican people to exercise their franchise? Why?
Because that's the only way they can get Portmore.
Not Portmore, St. Catherine.
Yeah.
Mr. President, the Jamaican people are seeing this delay for what it really is. A farce, a sham, and a sad affair of political expediency on full display. Mr. President, I said that I came to speak on behalf of the Jamaican people. And what this delay really does is not just to trample on democracy, but it tramples on representation and the importance of that representation. There are candidates who have been working for years, and I want to speak specifically to young candidates who have offered themselves in service of the nation, who have sacrificed, Mayor, who have sacrificed time, resources, and energy. It is unfair to them. It is unfair to all the candidates who have been slaving away, hoping that their retirement will come, who have been not giving fully of themselves or giving full representation that the people demand. It is unfair.
And unfair to those whose councils have passed and have
Mr. President, we see that almost 15 divisions at least are without representation. How is it that we can feel comfortable allowing people to live that way? We must allow people to exercise their franchise. Yes. President, I promised I would not speak for long, but I want to close by making what I believe is a significant intervention. Yes, and this speaks to apathy, the growing apathy among especially young people, yes, my generation. And this delay, this one-ton delay, my colleagues, does not help to evoke any sense of confidence for the young people of this country. Mr. President, the Prime Minister spoke of the silent majority. Well, the majority is really not that silent. They're really not that silent. And to your detriment, if you refuse to ignore what they're saying, because what they're saying is that this government continues to trample on their rights, their freedoms, their liberties that they have been afforded. But arrogance, yes, you see, let it not prevail, but instead, let us use good reason, and reflect on the importance of the democratic process. It should never become a political football. Yeah. And I hate to say that this is what it has become. Delaying an election not once, not twice, but 3 times is unheard of. It's unheard of. It's unheard of in a dispensation where we have moved forward to correct the act, and it should never happen again. It should never happen again. My colleague, I'm of a different generation, and your Prime Minister promised something new and different, and he has not delivered. He has not delivered on that. He promised fixed election dates in a period of 100 days of re-election. Comrade Crawford, Senator Crawford, permit me, we are going to count, and I don't want to be wrong, but tell me, how far beyond 100 days have we gone? Mr. President, I submit to you 2,556. I submit to you, Mr. President, that it is unfortunate how we have chosen to proceed. It is unfortunate. And frankly, the reasons posited by the government have not done anything to gain the confidence of the people. I'm hoping that we can get to a place where we start to take the people seriously. Yeah. The people seriously. Allow the people to vote.
Yes, it's their right.
And let the chips fall where they may. May it please you, Mr. President.
Good job, Good job.
Thank you very much, Senator Morris. Senator Sinclair, I recognize you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, you know, we started a little late this morning because we were elsewhere. Recognizing someone who served Jamaica not only as first Prime Minister, but he also served as a local government representative and Mayor of Kingston. The Right Excellent Sir Alexander Busterman. Mr. President, coincidentally, today is our Senate sitting day, which would have brought me to Kingston, and I took the opportunity of attending that ceremony in recognition of a great man, in recognition of one who served. And our national heroes and our national symbols must be taken seriously by everyone. Everyone, regardless of politics. And I must say that I was disappointed. I was disappointed for the fact that there was no representation from the opposition. None whatsoever. You know, I was surprised and I was taken aback. And I said to persons on my side, well, there you go too. Not even a representative from the union, except for the BITU. And I did have to ask a question. You know, I had to ask a question whether when the other days of recognition of our heroes, and I see a list of dates in the program that was given to me that speaks to the other heroes, you, Sharer, most honorable. No, not hero. Sorry. Persons who we recognize. The Right Excellent Samuel Sharp, the Most Honorable Edward Seaga, Right Excellent Norman Manley, Marcus Garvey, Sir Donald Sangster, Sir Howard Cook, Michael Manley. Dates that are here. Persons who would have represented political parties on the other side. And I had to ask a question, if when these events arise, if persons from the opposite side turn up, I asked my good the Mayor of Kingston if he's present. He says yes. I inquired in relation to, I inquired of the hierarchy of the government, and I am told that if it's not the Prime Minister, the Honorable Andrew Holness, at the minimum, the Deputy Prime Minister would attend. We mustn't play politics. We must not play politics. We must not play politics. And I was disappointed this morning. I had to comment on it. But Mr. President, we are here this morning to deal with a particular bill that touches upon an event of local government. And I'm going to start out by saying that I support the bill before us for the postponement of local government. Before proceeding, Mr. President, I will say without fear or favor that I support the tenets of democracy. I support the tenets of democracy because you have a limited view of what is democracy, and I will get on to that. And true and effective representation at all levels, to include the local level. Mr. President, I have been a practitioner at the local level for a period now of 20 years. And during that time, I've advocated for sustainable community development and people participation in the direction and development of their communities. During the period, I have served in the capacity of councillor, a member and chairman of committees, chairman of the parish council, now the St. James Municipal Corporation, and mayor of the city of Montego Bay. And Mr. President, my comments in this debate are born out of my observations and experience in those capacities and engagement with people in various socio-economic groups across my division, parish of St. James and Jamaica on a whole. Some of the views that I will express today may cause some persons to feel uncomfortable, but be that as it may. But I am speaking, I'm going to express my personal views, and I will express my views that I derive from my observations and experience. Mr. President, on Friday, February 4th, 2022, in this very chamber, I pointed out that I was not a member of the executive, and hence my comments are my own personal opinion. And my position, as I stated then, and I will state it again today, and it was captured in this court. And I feel sure that the Jamaican public will support a postponement of the local government election to facilitate at an appropriate time a 2-in-1 election, whether it is 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road, while the resources be spent in overcoming the ravages of the COVID pandemic and providing a better quality of life for the weak and vulnerable. I made those comments then, and I heard comments being made by members of the opposition in respect to this, that at that time they had no opposition to the delay. Mr. President, it was also my view at that time, and I expressed it. I expressed it then, and I will express it again here, that holding 2-in-1 could spur greater participation and reflect better on our democracy. So, when you look on those comments, it touches upon the economics, and it touches upon the whole issue of our democracy. And I hear the comments about this democracy. We're trampling on democracy. We're doing these things. But democracy is not just an election. The term democracy is not just to go vote. It doesn't mean that. So, Mr. President, at that time we were in the midst of the pandemic. Today we are just emerging from that pandemic. The worst pandemic in a century, with the attendant economic fallout that did not spare Jamaica. My personal opinion then remains my opinion now. And when one considers voter apathy, in particular to the local government polls, local government turnout, when you look on the results right across Jamaica, on average 25% for turnout. The turnout of the voting population. But 25% turnout, generally. When you look in some divisions, the turnout is all 15%, you know. 15%. I looked on one in Kingston recently, and I think it was about 2,000 persons voted for the person who was successful, and 49 people voted for the person who lost the election. How is that considered democracy? In the true sense of the meaning of the word democracy. What you have there could be considered ruled by the minority, because a minority of persons come out in the poll at local government. But the cost, Mr. President, remains the same, and I spoke about that then, where you had cost of $1.5 billion for the holding of a poll. The fact that our recovery has been commendable, and our leader of government business has spoken about that. And it should be spoken about. It still doesn't take away my opinion as I've expressed it from February of 2022. Mr. President, I hear this comment, and I saw 3 members of the opposition turn out and speak about fear. Fear to face the electorate. I just found that to be a ridiculous idea. As to which political or person that engages in politics would have fear. Mr. President, I, for one, I have no fear. I remain confident that the residents of Montego Bay Northeast, as they did in 2003, as they did in 2007, as they did in 2012, as they did in 2016, will do the same at that appropriate time. Mr. President, the track record of this administration at the central government level and at the local government level, and in the most challenging of times, I feel confident we'll get the approval of the Jamaican public at that appropriate time. Mr. President, there is also a pending review of aspects of the Jamaican Constitution. Some of those require the views of the people of Jamaica in a referendum. Would it be far-fetched to include those questions at the same time as a ballot on councillors and members of parliament? So instead of a 2-in-1, well, probably we can have a bundling of the things that are put to the electorate. It's a matter for the executive and the people to determine. And you know, I was looking through some newspaper clippings and I came across a Gleaner editorial, September 22 of 2022. And it is headed, the editorial, they supported the bundling of local government elections and referendum. The Gleaner editorial. And this was a quote in that editorial. They are presently due in February, but that date need not be written in stone. Really? Yes. The administration will need more time to complete the legislative framework for such a referendum. The Gleaner. It would not hurt in those circumstances to postpone the local government elections for a few months. So they see the benefit of what they also described as a combo poll, but they said you can bundle these various issues into a poll. It is practical, efficient, it leads to better democracy because you have a higher turnout for when they talk about general elections. If you put a referendum in there, should we remove from the monarchy and become a republic? Persons, I am certain, will come out to express their position. And we have them bundled together. It allows for persons to come out and express themselves. It may go one way as well as it may go the other. So be that as it may. Mr. President, you know, I watched the debate in the lower house, and I saw the leader of the opposition hold up a document. Document which is entitled an act to amend the Constitution of Jamaica to make provisions for the inclusion of a democratic system of local government for Jamaica in the Constitution. Good. We're all happy about that. Persons who practice at the level that I practice at as a local practitioner. I support that. Everybody supports it. In fact, it was part of what came out of a commission that should be done. Prime Minister Bruce Golding was a great advocate for local government. He was. And I give him credit for that. Mr. President, did the act go far enough? And you know, sometimes you must tell the people what is real and what you create out there as mirrors. But did that go far enough? Beyond placing the name local government in the Constitution, did it ensure its tenure and provide autonomy and the authority it truly deserves for efficiency and effectiveness? In my own opinion, Mr. President, it did not. And a reading of Section 2.5 reflects that Parliament may still make provision for several aspects of local government. And these include, in respect to local authorities to generate and spend their own revenue, Parliament can deal with that. I find it a bit appalling that sometimes you want to look on increasing own source revenue, and you have to make an application. It has to go to the minister for it to be signed off. It has to go to the minister. But it is a local issue that we're dealing with. For assigning the functions between the various tiers of government is contained in that particular bill or act. Matters relating to the manner in which local authorities are constituted and the nature and extent of their functions can be impacted by Parliament. The holding of local government elections. So when they did this, they still allowed Parliament to have control. And prescribing any other matter relating to the governance of local authorities. Mr. President, in many respects, it seems from this particular act that the Parliament and the Executive maintains control of local government and local governance. Control of many of the levers for the better running of a local remains outside the purview of the municipal corporations, and which hamper their effectiveness, efficiency, and the ability to respond to the needs of the citizens of a particular local. And so when you speak of voter apathy, some persons look on the municipal corporations, they look on the elections and say, why should I come out and vote and you can't achieve anything for me? That is one of the things that leads to voter apathy. Yeah. Mr. President, this, Mr. President, caused many to be of the view that the arm of government which is closest to them is meaningless, so why go out and vote? 15% and 20% is what we seem to be happy with. We have to do better than that. So, Mr. President, my query, can voter apathy be seen at the local, that we see at the local polls be reversed by continued reform in local government so as to improve its efficiency and effectiveness in building more sustainable and safe communities? I believe that it can. And I want to give you, as I said, I speak from my observation and my experience. There's a community in my division, I am sure. They have 11 community lots. 11 community lots. All of them are in bush. but the municipal corporation holds them in trust for the residents of that community. It's part of the development process where lands are given to communities. And in 2015, I took a resolution to the municipal corporation coming out of meetings that we have had with the Citizens Association in that community. And it was that 3 of the lots, which really, they are small lots. You can only put a house on it. It's a house type of lot. The citizens said, sell them. And let us build on another community land, which is more significant in size, and build our community center that we can use, we can generate income for the community, for the benefit of the community. 2015, the resolution was taken, and it had to go to the ministry because there's a provision in the Local Governance Act. The municipal corporation cannot rent its property, it cannot sell its property unless you get the approval of the minister. Then when it goes to the minister has to send it to a divestment committee. And it gets held up in this divestment committee, whatever that is, and whoever comprises this divestment committee. Well, it's 2023, and we are still there, trying to get the thing done. And this is what would cause the citizens in Ironshore to say then what is the purpose of the municipal corporation. Let us say we could get it through and you use procurement guidelines to deal with that situation, and you get it through and they can build their community center. The residents, I am certain, is going to say the municipal corporation in partnership with us can help us to build our communities. And we have a greater interest in wanting to come out and exercise our democratic right. Democracy, Mr. President, democracy is about people participation. 15% is not democracy. I quote, it is hard to have government of, by, and for the people if the people are not participating. Public participation is the lifeblood of democracy. Democracies don't work well if people don't vote. And where people do not vote, you have a weakening of democracy. So, when I hear this talk about democracy, about an election, democracy about just election, that is not what we should be looking about. We must look at how we can encourage voters to come out and participate in an event that we call an election, to get them out to vote. Low turnout undermines many of the key aspects of a democracy, namely majority rule, fair representation, policy responsiveness. How do we get our people out? And I'm saying, let us look on the whole process of doing true and proper reform, and to ensure that municipal corporations are able to effectively, efficiently respond to the needs of the communities. You can say anything. So, Mr. President, I do believe that we can have a turnaround, but we have to create it. We have to do the reforms that are necessary. Mr. President, I'll give you another example. For the efficient running of any particular local, you have central government, stakeholders. You have National Works Agency. Do National Works Agency turn up at council meetings? Do they? And if they don't, what is the position that can be taken against them? Seems nothing. Mr. President, they have critical stakeholders in many of the processes that have to take place in order to create the effectiveness of a municipal corporation. And if they don't participate in the process, you have issues. Mr. President, I heard the comment of Senator Morris, and they speak about some divisions that are not represented, and some persons who have representatives, but they are not performing because they want to go and retire. And my comment to those who are there and don't want to do them work, retire and leave the thing, man. Leave it. Go home. If you're underserving the people, go. Representation. But they are not being represented. They are not being represented in St. James. Two councillors refuse coming to council meeting for 3 months. Refuse coming to council meeting for 3 months. That's not representation. You're not providing any representation. But representation doesn't stop with the individual council. Pardon me? They got rid of themselves. It is a rule. You don't come to 3 council meetings, you're automatically removed as a councillor. Right? Nobody never removed them. They removed themselves by being ineffective. And once the calendar, the attendance record was read, that was it. Didn't require a vote or anything. So, Mr. President, what is it? What we need to look at in respect to that issue that you speak of, Senator Morris, is that should we amend? Listen up. Should we amend the ROPA? You know why? Because there's a particular provision in the ROPA, in the same Schedule 8, 4-5, that a by-election can be called to fill a vacancy. But then somebody added a proviso to it. Somebody added a proviso to say that no election shall be held if the vacancy occurs within 1 year before the next general election. Should we amend it? Should we amend the proviso and remove it from the ROPA? We hear about comments in relation to Portmore. And this issue of Portmore, I find quite interesting. Mr. President. Mr. President, Portmore municipality was created under the PNP administration. And listen, man, that is what was used to delay an election on 3 occasions, by the most honorable PJ parties. Portmore. The Daily Cleaner, Mr. President, had this as their headline in its publication of March 12, 2003. Elections off again. Local government polls postponed for the 3rd time. So when you said that you never heard it before, I'm just letting you know that it was done. It was done before. Mr. President, that is what was used, Portmore. It is just interesting that Portmore is now again here. But let me tell you what I'm saying about Portmore. Here, listen what I'm saying about Portmore. Mr. President, the current needs. Mr. President, can you ask him to cut the noise on the independent section for me?
The minister is, I'm sorry, the senator is accustomed to speaking in the parish council where respect is offered to him. And I expect that he be given the same courtesies here.
Senator Scott Martin. Mr. President, the current need for the adjustments to the boundaries and the creation of Portmore as the 15th parish is important. Just as it was important then, it's important today. There are several benefits to be derived from the making of the municipality a parish. And when it is made a parish, I am encouraging the residents to demand the benefits that come with that process. As the municipality is presently constituted, there is also an anomaly that exists where you have the councillor sitting in two councils at one time. No, come on now,
Thank you.
Senator Brown.
The Speaker's time has expired.
Come.
The Speaker's time has expired.
You're not doing it.
The Speaker's time having expired, I ask that it be extended for 3 minutes to allow him to conclude his presentation.
The question is that the Speaker's time be extended to allow him to complete his presentation.
Senator Scott Marley.
Those in favour?
We don't live that way now. We are the S's. But anyhow, you know, so, Mr. President, the anomaly that exists there, it needs to be corrected. It needs correction. And you know, you have a system that you created. You have a system that you created of a direct election of mayor. Very noble. And probably we should look in that direction in respect to all municipalities. All municipalities. But Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, when I look at what exists in Portmore today in respect to the mayor, it created a position of a mayor with little or no authority. Little or no authority. So he has this large space that he has responsibility for. He doesn't have a budget. He doesn't have a budget. The member of parliament in that particular space has a greater budget for a smaller space than the person who has the responsibility for the large space. That is a strange setup. You don't have an executive mayor like what exists in other municipalities. And some of these things are things that need to be looked at in respect to just an overall of local government for it to be made more effective and can respond to the needs of a local. Mr. President, if all municipalities, as I said, move in the direction of direct election of mayors, it should not be of the kind that exists in Portmore. So in closing, and I'm closing, thank you for the 3 minutes, Senator Scott Martin. I appeal to those on both sides of the aisle that whilst this delay takes place for good reason, and the reasons have been posited and spoken by the leader, we must cast our minds and have a true and hard look at the system of local government and local governance and execute the reforms which allows municipal corporations to respond effectively and efficiently to the concerns of the respective locals across Jamaica. There are major reforms that are needed. I believe it will go a far way in removing the voter apathy that we have seen over the years, and that one will feel comfortable in respect to the expenditure that you spend it at the appropriate time. Fixed date elections, I have no issue with it. But we have to have a true democracy. And democracy is not just about an event called an election. If it so pleases you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sinclair. Thank you very much. Senator Allen, I recognize you from a seat other than your own.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you. So, since my microphone was just adjusted, I will say that unlike my colleague from the West, I do not believe that because voter turnout in a local government is low, that we should not proceed with an election. As a matter of fact, my colleague who boasts of his 4-time election should not have any difficulty causing people to come out to vote.
But he should have 100% turnout.
I would say at least 75%.
It's because the land must sell, that's why.
The land, it may be. But let me focus on this long overdue local government election. As my colleague said, representation matters. It's very important. It's critical, yes, to our democracy. It is vital to the governance structure. And it is important that we take the people seriously. As a citizen, I count myself among those who are dissatisfied with the treatment being given to local government. The fact that we can so willy-nilly decide to postpone again for another 365 days. Not even the decency to say or give more specific dates, but by the 28th of February 2024. We heard that last year, by February 28, 2023. We heard that the year before, by February 28, 2022, yet here we are today. I have been so fortunate, Mr. President, to have had a front row seat to local representation. I know what that looks like. I've seen it all my life. Local representation, local government means infrastructure. It means development. It means planning. It means maintenance. It means advocacy. It means a lot. It's the closest place that many people in Jamaica will know in terms of understanding and having an appreciation for those who represent them. It is therefore vital that we begin to pay more than lip service to local government and stop treating it with such scant regard. There are some facts that I wish to point out today. Facts. The Prime Minister promised fixed election dates. That's a fact. He promised it within the first 100 days, and I did calculate it. Tomorrow would make it 2,557 days.
What about when the solar?
Serious?
Fact. This is the third postponement request. Fact. The government knew way back when, at least 3 months ago, that this proposed consultation that is so critical for Portmore would not have been completed by the 28th day of February 2023 and therefore should not be used as an excuse for the postponement of the elections. That's a fact. Fact, the government was in a position before, a mere 3 days before the ending of that 365 days, to have had the decency and the courtesy to the Jamaican people to give better notice.
Of course.
Freedom, freedom.
That's a fact.
Freedom, freedom.
It's true, man. No respect.
Freedom.
It is a fact that 15 divisions across Jamaica.
If you're not afraid, call it. If you're not afraid, if your polls did not show you losing, then call it. If Andrew Wallace called it in the middle of COVID, your polls show that you can win in the middle of COVID.
Mr. President, can I have some protection for...
Like that, so call it. Call it.
We are not afraid here. We are not afraid. The people will win because whatever they choose, it's their right to be represented. Let the people speak.
Absolutely.
Let the people speak.
It is a fact that 15 divisions are without representation, and I do not wish to be told that in those instances the mayor has oversight. Those mayors have their own responsibility and cannot give appropriate recognition and representation unless you might be Delroy. There are 2 divisions in St. James. This is a fact. There are 2 divisions in St. James counted amongst the 15. And they deserve representation. The people deserve representation. And I'm just saying, the citizens of Salt Spring Division, the citizens of the Catadupa Division deserve representation by whomever. Okay? That's a fact. These are facts.
Listen to facts, that's right.
When the former Minister of Local Government, I believe at the time it was former Senator Arnold Bertram, was charged with the responsibility for local government reform, I am certain if we ask him today what are his views on what's happening right now, he would be disappointed. Because local government now has been left to the whims and fancy of a person or a group of persons to simply change a date. The people deserve better. The people are watching. The people see you. We see you. We know what generalship look like.
Yes, we know. And we see it in front of us.
I will look over there.
It was intended for local government to become a stronger, more autonomous management body with the responsibility for cities and towns. But because of the lacking in recognition, it's being relegated to just being kicked around year after year, 365 after 365. We see you. The people see you. Former councillors like Marie Atkins, Bobby Pickersgill, Natalie Nita, Denise Daly, and from St. James, Napoleon Vernon, Charles Sinclair Sr., Glover Allen, Cecil Donaldson, Portia Lucretia Simpson Miller, and others would be disappointed with where we have allowed Charles Sinclair.
He's disappointed, I listen to him.
He's disappointed, I know he is. So too Natalie, Senator Rodriguez, she's disappointed.
Yeah, but she's a local government.
Former local government representative. Huh? And I'm certain that the mayor is disappointed with all that is going on. But yeah, man. These persons have named, they have served, they have lobbied, and they have hoped that a day like today would never have come. It is important that at the end of the day, at the local level, the people get their representation, that they have a voice and their voices are heard. And not because of government and central government inefficiencies and bundling, as you have just mentioned. Those things should not determine. Those things should not prevent us from seeing local government as the important element of our constitutional rights as citizens, to choose our representatives and have a voice in how we are to be governed. It is important. The fact is, the facts are there, and yet here we are today being asked again to grant another 365 days. But the question is, how credible? How credible? This is about credibility and governance and representation, Mr. President. We were made promises. Promises were made to us, and they're not being fulfilled. We don't know what the next promise will lead to. I stand here today in opposition of this request or this proposal to further postpone the long overdue local government elections which the people deserve. It is unfortunate that we are here today, but be it as it may, my responsibility is to voice the concern and the concern of so many citizens out there today with where we are in this decision to go in this direction by the government. Mr. President, if it pleases you.
Thank you, Senator Allen. Senator Williams.
No, not much. No. Mr. President. Mr. President. You're not hearing? Mr. President. Yes. Yes. I shall not be long. But Mr. President, it was very difficult for me to speak. I mean, in my view, I thought that the reasons are very clear reasons. There are basically three reasons that were given. I believe that the reasons are clear and that I really didn't have to say much. And for the second thing is that because I'm mayor, there are some that could argue that, you benefit, your interest is served from supporting the postponement. Some people could say that. You're a mayor and the postponement, you remain mayor until an election is held. No. And neither Senator Crawford. He wouldn't say that either. The truth of the matter is still that as mayor of Kingston, and looking at this where the municipality is now, we would be very confident going into an election. That's our position in Kingston and St. Andrews. would be very confident. If you were to ask me personally, I would want an election. No. And to settle the matter of the local governance of the Kingston and St. Andrew. But that would be my personal and private, and that would be serving my interest right now to go to an election, because I believe that we would win and win comfortably. I'm referring to, and I'm speaking about Kingston and St. Andrew. So that would be my personal view. If you look at Kingston and St. Andrew, the transformational trend is in place. The transformational trend is in place. And there are a lot for us to speak about. For example, I say clearly and confidently that we have, this administration, that we have renovated and upgraded the most markets in the history of local governance in Kingston and St. Andrew in a single term. I don't think that anyone can defeat that argument. If you look at for example, if you look at the Papine market. She went to you. If you look at the Papine market was destroyed. The entire roofing structure was destroyed by fire. In my years of being a councillor, whenever a market is destroyed by a fire, yes, it takes 13 to be repaired. When the Papine market was destroyed, it's okay, I could speak like this. When the Papine market was destroyed and the entire roofing structure was destroyed, there are many who felt that it would not, that would not be repaired within the term, this current term. It was repaired within 18 months. The entire roofing plus additional renovation works within the Papine market. You would want Venetia to be here because she would tell you the truth. Yes, you would want her to speak. The other thing is the Stony Hill market. We have just a few months ago completed another set of renovation works at the Stony Hill market. We are completing 99% complete with the renovation works at the Jubilee market. Yes. Local government will do. Don't say that, because in that case, you would have to talk to Senator Brown very often. So we have also completed the renovation of the Red Rose Fish Market. That's 4 markets already. In a single term. We have also, if you look at the downtown space, if you look at the revetment works along the waterfront, stretching from the Bank of Jamaica to the Raytown Fishing Market, transformation of the space. If you look at the muralized areas where we have put in the bricks and to soften the space, put in the mural works, we are expanding that now to Beeston Street and Charles Street to honor that Beeston Street right here, and Councillor Damian Crawford. Sorry. I know you're looking for a seat. That's a councillor. Senator Crawford, you are well aware of music streets in the downtown area, and pretty aware of the role Beeston Street, Charles Street, sections of Orange Street played in the evolution of the music. We are also expanding the works on those streets to let those streets, so we can display the role those streets played in the evolution of music within Jamaica and within the city of Kingston. So the point I'm making, and I could go on and on about the parks and the Marvelly Park and the Duane Park and the St. William Grand Park. I could go along about the over 10 acres of land that the municipality gave up for the parliament to be built. And the parliament, the new parliament, will be a transformational project for the city of Kingston. So the city is visioning transformation. I'm quite proud of the record, quite proud of the direction we're taking. The point I'm making is that we're not afraid of an election. We are not afraid of an election. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of in the mood to debate. So my interest would be served, and I tell you, if you go to the municipality and speak to the JLP councillors, they are ready. Ready. But we have to look at the bigger picture. We have to look at the bigger picture. And I'm going to take, and I have looked at what the government has said, and I'm going to tell you now why we still see it as the bigger picture. And though we want the election, we still have to look at it the same way we looked at it in the 1990s and the early 2000s. I was a young councillor caretaker at the time when the elections, when the elections were postponed. Yes, in 2001 and I wanted elections. I was confident that I was going to win. I waited about 10 years. I served as a councillor caretaker for 10 years. 10 years. I waited patiently. I did not complain when the most Honorable P.J. Patterson spoke about reasons for postponing elections, local government. The Portmore municipality was a major reason for the postponement of the election. Then the most Honorable P.J. Patterson laid that clear in Parliament. I wanted elections at the time because he wanted to win. But I still had to accept it. And to accept that the reason, though I did not share it, but it was still a good reason at the time. I'm not telling you that I accepted the reason, that I agreed with it, but it was still reasonable. It was still reasonable. The most Honorable P.J. Patterson was arguing at the time that they had to resolve the issue of Portmore, and they wanted to resolve it before going to an election, a local election. They felt that it was important to settle the Portmore issue. Constituency and divisional boundary adjustment is a part of the democratic process. It is an important, not a trivial, an important part of the democratic process. And if the government is saying that the issue of Portmore today, because it was it was the same issue back then, but it was a different issue to be resolved. Now you're resolving another issue in that, yes. And the government now is saying, all right, we have come this far. We have come from the 1990s to the early 2000s, and now we are still progressing with the issue of Portmore. And that it is important for us to resolve that issue before going to the next local election. That's an argument that the government is preferring, is putting on the table. It's not unreasonable if you look at it. It's not anti-democratic. It is crucial to democracy that you resolve that issue. To say to the people of Portmore that issue is not important to the democratic process, I don't think it's kind. It's not kind. You might not agree, but don't say it is anti-democratic. Don't say it is trivial. Don't say it is not important, because it is. As a local government practitioner, it is, in my estimation, a very serious issue. And within that context, that's one of the reasons why, even though I would want to go to an election, I would support the postponement, because I believe that that issue is sufficient enough for a postponement to resolve the issue. Most Honorable P.J. Patterson did it. They eventually resolved the issue. Went to elections. The government of Jamaica is still saying Portmore municipality, big issue. Boundary adjustment, big issue. St. Catherine, big issue. Portmore as a parish, big issue. Let's resolve those. So that's reason one, and I accept it. Reason two, the economy. Economy can't, well, we all know that can't be trivial. And again, Senator Crawford, you should know as a businessman that the economy can't be trivial. No, I'm going to just find, and I'm going to make the point. In 2022, the leader of the opposition, Mark Golding, said that the state of the economy was a factor in relation to COVID-19. Listen carefully. Was a factor in relation to COVID-19. He alluded to the dollar, the net international reserves, healthcare system, and said, quote, the labor rights have rushed to call elections. This, the leader of the opposition said it. Yes, what's the point? It's very important. The point for me is that time, because government is government, where government sits, at times the view is different. And that's something that we have to accept. There's sometimes we see from where we are. What he was saying at the time was that the economy is important in the decision-making process. And in this case, it's important in relation to calling of an election. Yes. So the leader of the opposition wasn't saying the economy is not important when you take these decisions. In the context of COVID, in the context of what was happening, he felt that the economy was important in making the decision about elections. Come to where we are now. I know we are all boasting that the economy has rebounded, that we are on the right track, that we are pre-COVID levels, and the economy is showing strong signs, and that the macroeconomic path is good. We are saying all of that. Wait. We are saying all of that. But still understand this. There are still many risks within the global economic environment. Risks abound. There are many uncertainties within the global economic environment. We all understand the Jamaican economy. It is responsive to events in the global economic space. Many jobs were lost during the COVID. Many jobs were lost. Many businesses were crushed. Many jobs were lost. Many businesses were crushed. There are many of us just recuperating and getting our lives back together and entrepreneurs getting back business together. The government is taking the decision to protect the economy of Jamaica. Listen carefully. The decision to protect the Jamaican economy can't be trivial. And that is the point. It is not a trivial decision to protect the economy at this current time. So we always stand. So the point I'm making, if you don't agree with the decision to protect the economy, say you don't agree with it, or say you don't think it's necessary, don't say it's trivial. Don't say it's trivial. Don't say it's not a good reason, because getting back lives together and on the path of prosperity can't be trivial. You remember, you know, the government has stated reasons for the postponement. I am looking at the reasons. I have looked at the Portmore issue. I have rooted it back in some decisions most Honourable P.J. Patterson made with respect to the same Portmore issue. And I'm saying, then for me, I accepted it.
You wait 10 years.
I waited 10 years, and I never quarreled. I never quarreled. No, I waited. No, I'm saying I accept the government decision now to postpone. I accept that.
Senator Fraser Binns.
Second.
You're going to speak on this.
So what you're trying to say? No, I'm not getting that point, you know. There's a point of clarity. I really want you to make that point.
Senator Fraser Binns, you intend to speak on this?
Yes, no, because the point I'm getting,
you're
Mr.
talking out the
President.
whole of your speech already, you know. Senator Williams, continue, please.
So the point I'm getting is that you didn't accept the reason by the Most Honourable P.J. Patterson. That's what I'm getting coming out from you. Yeah. It is possible, and I'm saying, so are you stating categorically that you did not accept the reason put forward by the Most Honourable P.J. Patterson when he postponed? No. So, but my point is different. I accepted it then, and I'm accepting this reason now. Yeah, I'm accepting this reason now. I didn't have a problem at the time. I'm very clear. I didn't have a problem. You can go check the records. You can go in civil rights gardens and ask PNP or JLP. I did not quarrel. I kept going because I accepted it. I represented nonetheless. As councillor caretaker. No. Wait, I'm coming. No, I'm ending now, so I just want to ensure. I just want to ensure. And you know what I'm saying now? What I'm saying? It was the point that the Most Honourable P.J. Patterson made then. Did he use these words? But I'm sure you're not going to have a problem if I put these words. Putting people first is not a slogan. It's an action. So when those decisions were made then, he was very clear. He was putting people first in his mind. That's what he was thinking. Whether you agree with him at the time, he was putting people first, not as a slogan, as an action.
So you guys don't have...
I'm saying now, as I conclude, as I end, and you know, I've missed a few points along the way because, you know, but as I end, I think let's end on I'm just going to end by just giving you clearly, this is my thinking. Clearly, I'm saying, I believe when I looked at the picture, the big picture, and I looked at the postponement and the duration to the next election, and look at all the factors, whether I agree with the arguments or not, I would say I think the arguments are very reasonable, sound, and doable. And it is within this context. It is within this context that I support the postponement, and I think it goes well in terms of the democratic process for the municipality of Portmore and other municipalities affected. And I think it's worth the wait for the people of all the parishes involved in that process and in the process of boundary adjustments as a critical part of the democratic process and in the process of reorganization and restructuring municipalities and empowering them. I think it's a very critical part of what is happening with local government. I think the issue here is also giving a lot of focus to real issues within local government. There are real issues that must be resolved. As mayor, I'm aware of so many of them. I am aware of so many issues that cripple us at the level of local government. I'm aware of how important local government is to the lives of people, to community life, and so many issues that cripple us. So this issue is also, the Portmore issue, is bringing to focus, and Senator Sinclair has touched on many of the issues there. In a broad way, Senator Sinclair is saying there are many issues to be resolved. Let's resolve them. And I believe that we can resolve them in a year to 18 months. I think many of these issues will be resolved, can be resolved if we are committed over an 18-month period. And that's my view. And I'm saying, is it worth it? Is it worth the wait? Is it worth the focus on local government that impact on so many lives? Of course it's worth it. Of course it's worth it. With that, I say thank you very much. And may God bless you. May God bless you and protect you and guide you. Thanks.
Minister is just about one. Minister? 120. Minister, it's just been about 120.
Mr. President, might the Senate be permitted to sit beyond 1:30 to complete the business of the day?
Members should have heard the question. Those in favour? Against? Subject, of course, is the fact that I'm going to have to take a break for the staff to refresh themselves. Thank you, Senator Williams. Senator Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I must admit that I'm looking forward to the local government debates because my good mayor here is on form and prepared. I thought at one point that the election was going to be called because he was on a serious campaign. I think Prime Minister Holness also meant it when he was told, call it, Andrew, call it in 2011. And having called it, what was expected to be a landslide victory became a landslide defeat. And young people time. But equally, whether or not side A or side B will be successful is not a basis for calling an election. Maybe it is true that the PMP should not want an election, but that's not a basis for calling an election.
That's right.
Maybe it's factual that the JLP will win landslide, but that's not a basis for calling an election. The basis of calling an election is based on a principle that people should be heard and that your performance should be judged. If it is found that your performance in the market, in Papine, was worthy of votes in Papine, it will recur to your benefit. If it is found that the what's her name, Senator Venetia Phillips, who is the PMP councillor, who is the PMP's, I'm making some proposals. Delhi have surprised me, I must say. But if it is that Councillor Venetia Phillips was perceived by the people to be the key practitioner, it will resound to her or the PMP's benefit. But none of that is the reason for calling an election. In fact, I put it to you that the people in Constant Spring Market that you took away and displaced, they may want to vote against. Though the people in wherever else may want to vote for. Well, you say it's inaction because maybe you have the document of the agreement, but I also have the demonstrations that they mounted against it in action. And so therefore agreement is not only in words, agreement is also in action. We have before us some arguments since Tuesday that has been polluted with lies and deception, stink of disrespect, and rank with delusions of grandeur. Because what you're putting forward, your intellect is not sufficient to take everybody for fool. You'd have to be intellectually superior to a level unquestionable that anything you say, regardless of how ridiculous it is naturally accepted because you can spin a tale better than everybody else. I'm going to first look at what is the reasons being proposed and put to the public and to the Senate that these reasons are not sufficient. I don't know the full details of 2003. In 2003, I was at the university. I wasn't a full participant in politics. But equally, nothing suggests that 2003 had to be correct. And the way I learn it is that reversed unfairness is not fairness. So if it is that you unfortunately had to wait 10 years, the reverse is not fair. That is you. But we should do a survey to see if no one had a problem with it. In fact, if we should follow the arguments of the JLP, which needs a time machine, then when they change the law for the murder law or the firearms law, and the judge said 40 years for murder, the person in front of the judge should say, but oh, John did get 10. That 40 years shouldn't apply. Because in 2016 and 27 and 2093 and 92, Mary got 6, so oh, me forget 40. And the judge will rightly say that you're getting 40 because things have changed and times have changed. Right. You're getting 40 because the law has changed. That's right. And that law change was in full agreement with the Jamaica Labour Party. But the Jamaica Labour Party and its leadership is not true. And notice I didn't say not truthful, but to the principles that they expose, they're not true. Now I see everybody is in support of 3-in-1 and 2-in-1 and combination, combo package, go large with the referendum. Now, in 2020, there was the ability to combo. because in 2020, local government selection would have become due. Where was everybody knocking the table in the ears of the Prime Minister, who called the general election prior to its due date? Why wasn't it combined then, when the uncertainty of the times were greater than now? If I don't want to be distracted, I'm still at Portmore. I hear the Minister Arnaldo Alando, who is in East Central St. Catherine. He claims that one reason for the delay is that there are some areas within his constituency that isn't represented by the Portmore mayor. I don't understand what's the problem with that. Because they are represented by a mayor. Exactly. The St. Catherine mayor. In fact, I've never seen a conversation about people that have nothing to do with the people. The truth is that the JLP wants the St. Catherine Council, for which if the PMP holds Portmore as a part of St. Catherine, they will unlikely get. And the PMP wants to maintain St. Catherine Council, for which if Portmore is not a part, they might not keep. The whole quarrel around Portmore have nothing to do with Portmore. Wait a minute. You don't have a house in Portmore, you know, so you can't talk to me. I am a citizen of Portmore. Now, hold on now. Hold on. He claims. Hold on, man. Yes. He claims, one debate at a time. I see you're going hard, but you know. He claims, Minister Arnaldo Turlang, friend of mine, Hertfordshire Primary, that those two seats are underrepresented if we should go with an election at this time. But for some reason, the JLP has decided to sacrifice 15 areas without representation for a improved, in their minds, representation of 2 places with representation.
That already have representation.
Let I tell you, the 15 places that have no representation at present.
Tell us.
That are people not less deserving than what you claim for Portmore.
So,
I'm going to give you the 15. Okay. In St. James, Catadupa, the councillor was removed by default due to absenteeism. When Charlie was making that statement, when Senator Sinclair was making that statement, remember when he was leading that action, he suggested at the time that in short order, the people will receive, not by-election, representation. In short order, we could talk. In St. James, Cambridge. No, I said Catadupa first. But Cambridge is now serving as an MP. That was the former mayor. Omar is now serving as a mayor. The people have no representation in Cambridge. Some people will claim that when the person is removed, the mayor steps in. It was not the intent of the law for the mayor into perpetuity. For one, the mayor has his own area to represent. Additionally, for two, nobody voted for the mayor. Well, we don't know. You don't predict economic uncertainty. Economic uncertainty. I don't know if Russia going to invade Germany next. You don't predict economic uncertainty. You don't predict if another wave of COVID comes. So it wasn't intended for 3 years and 4 years and 5 years. This is what is happening. In St. James, Salt Spring, removed by default due to absenteeism. So in St. James, well on, man. In St. James, President, Mr. President, give me some protection.
Give Senator Morris protection.
In St. James,
3 out of 17 divisions.
not only 3 unrepresented, the mayor now has 4 divisions that he must oversee with no knowledge of the people and no vote by the people. At least if it was Portmore, the elected would have received some support from those people in those areas. He has none. Let me go again.
Number 4.
In Westmoreland, so we're going 3. White House, that councillor, Mr. President, has resigned. In Petersfield, that MP is now the JLP's representative and a member of parliament. That councillor is now a member of parliament. In Manchester, Knockpatrick, that councillor has died. In St. Elizabeth, none of them is there, sorry. In St. Catherine, Greater Portmore East, that councillor have died. In Point Hill, that councillor have died. In Spanish Town, that councillor have resigned. I think also migrated. Yeah. Sorry, resigned and I think migrated. In Spanish Town. In Clarendon, Mineralites, that councillor have died. In St. Mary, Retreat, now serving as an MP. In Trinityville, that councillor have died. In Fellowship, that councillor have died. In Fairy Hill, that councillor have died. To this point, 14. When you put undue stress, now the mayor from Kingston may not understand the requirements, because in Kingston I see none. So maybe that is why you don't recognize that importance. Now let I tell you from my experience, within certain constituencies, there are differences so stark that local representation is the only true viable way to represent their true and total interests. I draw on East Rural St. Andrew, for example. Harborview is so different from Mavis Bank. That Mavis Bank needs someone who understands. Let me tell you what happened when there is a hurricane in East Rural St. Andrew. A hurricane in East Rural St. Andrew have landslide in the hills, Mavis Bank and Garden Town. Look at Jizzle. It have flooding in the center, Kintyre. And it have storm surge on the flat, Dallas and Harborview. A person must be equipped to deal with all 3. And many times a single person cannot understand all 3. So, fine. I won't tell you about the computer center that was left to go into derelict and disrepair. I won't tell you about the park that was left to go into disrepair. I won't tell you about the education programs that were thrown up and discarded, the night schools. I'm saying that there are areas that I depended even on the JLP councillor to understand, yo, Shine, what's the situation? Very, very challenging. You know, of areas where those people don't have representation. I hear Councillor Sinclair say, oh God, he go from 2005 and he's been fighting and him don't get the land. You have got to tell him where you get the land because you gave it to the Parliament. But I'm saying that there are 14. There are 40. Yeah, teach him. Because if he don't get the land, they're 40 about it. So make sure you're sure about to get the land. And give him some too with the way up. There are 14 without a person that can make equal representation. Yes. That a person that they cannot go to say, let us try this or that or the other. There are 14 at this point. And even if your opinion is that some underperformed, that is one of the outcomes of an election, that I can choose not to keep those who underperform. I hear this foolishness that Portmore need to be a parish. The local government election does not prevent Portmore from being a parish. It does not prevent Portmore from being a parish. But I go further. What did you say? What did he say? People support his inaction? What he said? PJ said? I can't even remember. All right, that's what you said. No, I don't remember what you said. Because you know we do put people first. So therefore, when you say put people first, is in action. A reasonable action is to run a referendum within this local government for Portmore to say if they want to be a parish and how they want to be represented if they are a parish. You have not done that. You have a consultation with 28 people over 3 consultations. And you, I know what I love with the JLP. When them said not true, it might be 29. It might be 30. Like, no, one man did pass through at 12 and then he left. But it wasn't 200. It was not 250. So when you talk about combined referendum, Portmore should have the ability, not based on the fight over St. Catherine, to say, we want to be a parish, and if we're a parish, we want direct elections or no direct elections, or we want whatever, we don't know. Why is it that for Portmore, you have delayed an election when to be a parish, Portmore isn't prevented? It's not being prevented. Equally, you want to tell me that your agenda 1, Portmore, is more important than your agenda 2, the economy? You have placed that the order of priority. All right. That I didn't want to hear. I just wanted confirmation. Because you don't know. You don't go meeting. No, but wait. If Portmore is not priority 1, then how long we have to wait on the economy priority 2? If Portmore is not priority 1, then how long do we have to wait on what this is? High level of global uncertainty. Which is nobody knows. So even okay, we soon come to that. We soon come to that. So even if no, but wait, no. Yeah, man, we soon deal with the context of COVID-19 because we had a general election within the context of COVID-19. Good. At the peak. Okay. All right, let us use a more refined word. There is uncertainty about your timeline because there is none other than Portmore that you have control over. You have no control. All right. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why there's uncertainty. Let me tell you why there's uncertainty. 1 second. Mr. President, there must be uncertainty within proposed dates if proposed reasons are not in control of the people proposing the dates. So if you say one reason is that there is global uncertainty, you are not in control of global uncertainty. So therefore you cannot predict with any certainty, by extension giving uncertainty, to when this will be removed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I've also heard the JLP claim in particular Minister Turlang, that with this change, the people in those two areas will then get full representation under Portmore. I don't know how he came to that conclusion because the boundaries have not yet been defined. There's nothing to suggest that where he is will not be in St. Catherine. So unless the JLP have predetermined boundaries, I don't know how they come to a conclusion. Because a community... Let me give you something where... Stop disturbing me. Let's go. Make I hear you. All right? So there's no way because of what? Because piece of it can... Hold on. Mr. President. The only method of which disqualifies a cut is cross parish. That's the only method. That Kingston cannot go into St. Thomas, Clarendon cannot go into St. Catherine. That's the only thing that disqualifies. No. There is no Portmore. There is no actual boundary where that two areas that he speaks of doesn't fall in the current boundary of Portmore. Do I really have to yield, Mr. President?
I'll soon tell you. Yes, Senator Rodriguez Campbell Rodriguez.
I just don't want Mr. President to speak of mislead people. Portmore currently has borders. So to give the impression there are no borders for Portmore and they were done. So to say that there are no borders is incorrect. Please do not mislead.
Senator Rodriguez Campbell, thank you. Senator, continue, please.
Absolute ridiculous. I have to respond. No. Portmore as is.
1 minute. Senator Brown, would you give Senator Crawford a chance to complete his presentation, please?
And education, not just presentation, education. Portmore as is not a parish. So Portmore cannot have parish boundaries.
That's right.
Indeed, an argument put forward is that the re-boundary effort is a part of what makes it necessary to decide where people will fall after the election. So therefore, if it is that Portmore is not yet a parish, there can be no actual basis to say those in St. Catherine cannot be in Portmore and those in Portmore cannot be in St. Catherine because Portmore is not yet a parish. Simple. And that was stated. Yeah. Sometimes, they say a word to the wise is sufficient, but a libel to the foolish is a disrespect. All I'm saying is that what you put here don't make sense. The high level of uncertainty in the global economy and the economic environment, which may have domestic implications, requires government to focus at this time at building resilience to possible future shocks, as well as setting the country on a path sustained growth. I don't see how local government stops that. I'm not sure if the Minister of Finance is a candidate in the local government. I'm not sure if the Prime Minister is a candidate in the local government. It seems they're saying that because they will feel a duty to campaign, that duty will be prioritized over their responsibilities as ministers, and therefore, by extension, will put the country at risk. That's a ridiculous argument. But let us look at some countries that had elections in the global uncertainty. In the global uncertainty, Barbados had election. Weren't they in the same global? Yeah. The same global. Dominica had election. Yeah. Not in the same global? Yeah, the same global. St. Lucia, St. Kitts, Grenada, Antigua, they had election. Were they not? Guyana. United States of America. I'm coming to that. Jamaica. Where's the global wasn't worse then? So no principle. What you are putting forward is untruthful and malicious and unable to be accepted. But additionally, in times of crisis, the people should be allowed to choose who leads them in that times of crisis. In times of crisis, on the basis that we choose who lead you. The people should decide who take up them garbage in times of crisis.
That's right.
Because for now, garbage has not been prioritized by that government. The people should be able to say who delivers their rural water in times of crisis. So what is this basis that if there is a crisis, then we should now move from a democracy to an autocracy until the crisis ends? Is that what number 3 is saying?
That's exactly what
You say you are not calling it because you have a crisis being faced.
I think they can control the crisis. No, man, you're talking too
No.
much, Senator Williams.
The other thing I want to know is if local government is less important than central government.
Have always been.
Well, the country needs to hope that it is so. Because if it is not so, then these same arguments may be used for general elections as well. Because if local government is of equal importance to general election, then the arguments being used for the constant delay may be extended to the general election.
It's the same environment.
The same global environment, the same uncertainty, the same cost. So we go into number 3. They said the cost, high monetary cost of holding the elections, which requires budget. Let us look at this cost. $1.7 billion. Senator Webby, you will remember, December 2022, the Prime Minister with great fanfare announced that Christmas spending to Member of Parliament would be 21 million per Member of Parliament. You multiply that by 63, that's 1.3 billion. Was that Christmas spending to MPs mainly because you had a vast majority of MPs? That bolo work, more important than democracy? That was money that you choose to spend.
Just 2 months ago.
Just 2 months ago. We come again. The minister trying to find somewhere to catch former prime ministers of the Jamaica Labour Party said that he's renewing our monetary notes, costing us, some say, almost $2 billion. The only thing introduced of truth is a $2,000 bill, which is of no moment to $1,000 bill is a $2,000 bill. So their personal benefit is that they could now put pride of place on their representative somewhere on the money. That costs almost $2 billion. Is that more important than local government elections? Is that more important than the local government elections?
Is it? Ask again.
Senator, mayor, debater also said that the new parliament is going to be grand and beautiful. Is the new parliament more important than the democratic process? Is that so?
That should have been much years ago.
Let's go further. Let's go further. Economic environment, and I heard, some people, they lost their jobs, and some people, they lost their business. We know we were at the center. But I can tell you that elections create economic activity. A nice jump for the economy would be you everywhere spending in the bars. I've seen you.
Yes.
I've seen you in Bull Bay. I'm hiding, but I've seen you. Yes, I'm hiding. I don't want you to know that I'm there.
And the money in the charity, you know.
And the money being given out to the people who are the poorest is a good little spending. And the money for the T-shirts and the meetings. And the money for the transportation creates. How much time Senator Del Rey got to talk? 7?
speakers.
So when you...
Mr. President, oh, that's all you got, right? Mr. President, it's 3 enough.
No.
The speaker's time having expired, might he be allowed the time to wrap up his presentation, which will hopefully be...
The question is that thank you, Minister. The question is that the speaker be given time to complete his presentation. Those in favor?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I've learned my lesson. I'm not going to hurry up and then when the bill go through a year that it came before us and we never talk about everything. I talk about everything. So that when it come out with the child seat, I did talk about that too. I don't want it to be said that I never talk about everything. So additionally, the Prime Minister said recently that he found within the budget sufficient funds that he did not have to take a loan that was already approved by the Chinese government for the Montego Bay bypass. Yes. He said in his presentation, this is good for Jamaica. Even in a pandemic, we're able to develop our infrastructure with the resources of the people. That's what he said. He said, even in a pandemic. That's what I keep hearing you saying, pandemic. He then made a choice as a Prime Minister to refuse a pre-approved loan, agreed loan of $43 billion, and said that the budget was strong enough to fund it. And somehow you're coming before us now that the same budget is not sufficiently strong to fund something 20 times less. Something 20 times less. So, yes. So, and that is the point that we're making, that the people's choices should be a priority. The democratic process should be a priority. Satisfactory representation should be a priority. It is not up to the person holding power to retain power until he feels that there is no basis for a new priority. That's right. What Senator Sinclair came here with were two mutually exclusive concepts, because local government and general elections are not on the same cycle. One is on a 4-year cycle. One is on a 5-year cycle. So if you claim you agree to fix elections, then it is unlikely that the two cycles will coincide, other than maybe every 8 years or some mathematical thing where they will combine at some point in time. So to that extent, to claim that you have no problem with fixed elections, which the JLP has been stating over and over. But no action. But they have gone, you used to say 360 minimum go back the same direction. He has gone 180. Because this is not fixed election we're talking about. We're talking about due election. Yeah. Due election means this is the deadline for it. You could have called it before, but this is the deadline. Yeah. If you believe in fix, then you should believe in due election. Then you have a pass due for each fix. Absolutely. A person who believes in fix must hold themselves to due. That's it. Simple logic. But that has not been done. Let us give you some of the statements that you have made. It says, the time to change the system to fixed election date is now. Within our first 100 days of government, we will start the legislative process to fix the general election date in Jamaica. This will bring greater certainty to political process. Andrew Holness said that February 10th, 2016. 2016. Jamaica Prime Minister Andrew Holness has revealed that plans are on track for fixed election date. He said this in 2018. On track.
That's on that track in Ohio.
Holness told Parliament and I quote, during his contribution to the budget debate in 2018, that he had instructed Justice Minister Delroy Chuck to table a ministry paper and draft legislation for the fixing of election dates. No, to this date. But to this date, no. Well, he might have to either fire Minister Chuck or accept that he was being untruthful. Because the two cannot come together, the two cannot stand.
The job description wasn't met.
He says, listen what he said. If the country is serious about fiscal discipline, a fixed election date would be a necessary step. Now you're coming with the opposite. You're saying that your conversation about fiscal discipline would mean that election should be delayed. He said, I quote, if the country is serious about fiscal discipline, a fixed election date would be a necessary step. He goes further. He goes further. He goes further. No, Prime Minister Holness. He goes further. Not having fixed election dates come as a significant cost to business and delays our growth agenda. That is opposite to what we're having this paper. That's number 3 in reverse. That's number 2 in reverse. Both 2 and 3. He said, let I tell you, I gotta look. A significant cost to business. A significant cost to business. Hold on, man. All right. Hold on. Our growth agenda. I'm going to take a deep breath because the student is disrespectful. Give us some time. The ability to afford is based on our ability to grow. The Prime Minister himself, with the failed 5 and 4, suggested that the economy's growth would lead to more funds available to do the priorities of the society. So therefore, that part about we are being able to grow will make we can afford it. The impact on business will lead to destabilization in business uncertainty. That is why that is number 2 and 3. But it's opposite to something in what we put in here now. Opposite to something. He says further, fiscal discipline and obeying our fiscal rules, election can no longer be allowed to supervene a fiscal cycle. Neither should the country be disrupted by protracted periods of uncertainty. Wasn't the last 5 months total uncertainty?
Yes.
Everybody either prepared, unprepared. If the cleaner never bust say it now keep, we wouldn't know say it now keep. With the Minister of Security just randomly saying, you know, so we don't think it'll keep because, you know, we're not too nothing right now. Then he comes. Neither, I'm quoting, on the silent thing, neither should the country be disrupted by protracted periods of uncertainty, mobilizing, demobilizing, and then mobilizing again according to the political expediency. In the last 3 years, you come here 3 times for which we mobilized and demobilized and mobilized and demobilized. The hypocrisy of liars is based on a seared conscience. Seared conscience. What do you mean not true? The duty of those not in power is to prepare for power. Yes, we were mobilized. I was on the road. That's why I see you in Bulby. I saw you. I saw you in Bulby. No. All right, let me just clear up something. If I use what is right for my advancement, I am still right. If you use what is wrong for your advancement, you're still wrong. So all of them think about remove Mark, one is doing it to keep Andrew. And by extension, one wrong. Yeah, one wrong. Yeah. Because the people want to vote about him. The people want to vote him out. They want to vote him out. I think we'll get some vote from the I see. From the IC. Hold on now. Nobody. I like to do this. Yes, ma'am. Come again. Leaders in 2020, me all right. In 2020, one thing, the truth might be an offense. It's not a shame. Leaders commit to legislation for fixed election dates. Rebutting Phillips, Prime Minister and leader of JLP, Andrew Holness, said fixed election dates remain an aspiration of his government. Defending, this is a new word that I like to say, an aspiration. If it is an aspiration and you have the power to do it, do it. Do it. It's a lie from the bottom of the pit of hell. Yes, man. When you process, he promised the end of that process in 100 days. 2,500 days. He has had 25 periods. Let me tell you what I don't understand. You don't understand that some people want to know how bold money get taken at SSL and what was the relationship with the government at the present. That's what people want to know. Yeah?
Damien. Senator Crawford.
Oh. But when Brick did a lay, never gone far.
Senator Crawford. Senator Crawford. It's my intention to break, you know. Can you give me an idea as to how long you have left?
Soon done, soon done.
What you call, sir?
Soon enough for you to break.
Should take the break or...
No, sir, I'll be finished soon.
Okay.
Don't break now that we're talking about the real reasons.
Come again?
The real reasons. The real reasons. I can imagine, but this one still taught the truth. That's right. The truth is not always exciting or comfortable. They said, well, I stated, at least if it's one thing we achieve to show the lies that are being told. They said, and in addition to that, you may not know that we have placed training and all these things. JLP calls for fixed election date. This is November 19, 2015. November 19, 2015. November 19, 2015. Leader of opposition business in the Senate. You know who that was? Tom Tavares Finson. Called for fixed election dates. Yes. This was agreed to by the Prime Minister, who posted it on his Facebook page on the 19th. Senator said in a release that this will, quote, be a means of ensuring that Jamaicans who want to vote are not disenfranchised by the whims and fancies of the touch of any Prime Minister and their masters. Right. What has changed?
Something has changed.
What has changed now? Senator Finn, it's a good thing you don't vote. You don't vote no. Fixed election dates would mean that there is proper alignment of the enumeration period and elections. We also know that disenfranchising 37,000 young Jamaicans will not contribute to bringing more people closer to participation and contribute to the distrust and apathy Jamaicans has towards the process. That is what you just said.
Yes. Supported by
Senator Finson was in agreement.
You know that my view has changed because of the experience of the United Kingdom.
Don't get yourself involved in the debate.
No, but you're using me as somebody that used to support.
I'm using history, not you, sir. I'm using history.
But I look at, yes, because I've looked at the British. I looked at the British experience, English experience with fixed election date.
Yes.
And I'm not happy with the way it has panned out at all for them. It's not suiting the... If we copy,
yeah.
Come again?
All right, so you say you have changed your mind.
No, I don't want to take... You see, what Senator Brown is saying is that I have copy. I don't copy anything. I had a view, and that view was that fixed election date would suit our democracy. When I look at the experience elsewhere, I have changed my view. And one is entitled to change their view because that is the nature of intellectual growth.
So therefore, sir, the Prime Minister and the Jamaica Labour Party should come to state that they have changed their view.
I'm not talking to the Prime Minister. I'm talking for me, who you drawing an argument, not the Prime Minister.
You, sir. You said something for which history proves that this side is not consistent as the truth would be. That's all that happened. What you said, what the Prime Minister said, what that side said is not consistent in what is being put forward today. It is actually total opposite of what is being put forward today. And the basis of that principle are the opposite of what you said at this particular point in time. And so therefore, because Portmore, if they want, should be able to decide with a referendum, because it can still be a parish, even if an election is called, because there are 15 or 14 others without representation, which is not the same for Portmore, which have their representation, their mayor and their councillors, because this whole fight about the parish is not for the parish, because economic affordability cannot be an excuse for the democratic process not being adhered to, because in worse times, elections were called by the same party and the same Prime Minister. Yes. Because other countries have held their own elections in this global uncertainty, and they are outperforming Jamaica at this time. I hear them saying all kind of thing about miracle and all kind of thing, and they have been putting out Senator Scott Motley that the Financial Times have said that how well we are doing, and it is a miracle. It's a miracle. The people should be allowed to say they agree or disagree, because there's other information out there. The highest GDP growth in 2022. Jamaica is not in the top 30. So if Jamaica is the miracle, then Guyana 57.8, Fiji 12.5, Seychelles, Barbados 10.5. Barbados is fourth. If Jamaica is not in the top 30, Barbados is what then? Super miracle. Super miracle. Barbados had an election. They're growing at 10.5. Same economic circumstance. But wait, St. Kitts, did they have an election? Yes. They're at 5th. Jamaica not in the top 30. Hold on again. St. Lucia, did they have an election? Yes. Okay, good. IMF ranking, they're at 7th. Jamaica not in the top 30. So what you're claiming have not proven itself to be true, because 3 of the countries that had elections in this global uncertainty is outperforming Jamaica at this point. The same region. GDP growth rate as per real GDP in annual percentage change as of October 2022. We can only state what is the, you don't want to use what they think should be used. This is the IMF report. The top 30, you're not in it. You're not in it. And these people had elections. Had elections. In 2020, I know. You know what this is like? When the people say, did SSL fund the JLP? Their response was, we don't have an account with SSL. We never asked if you bank with them. We asked if they bankrolled you. 2021, Bobby. 2022, I just quoted. So you come now to rebut me with 2021. Let me see if you just stop. Yes, you have to do it in the closure. All I'm saying is the evidence stands against what you're saying. Your past utterances stand against what you're saying. The principle of democracy stand against what you're saying. The only reason this can be done is because you have the numbers, and the people may want to change that. Right. Give the people what they want.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Senator Crawford. The Senate will now rise for 30 minutes to allow persons to refresh themselves.